But anyway, my family survived, you know, and my mother did what she did, and we all grew into manhood. And my brother Rick was up in Canada a lot then. He'd been in the service. He went AWOL, and he'd signed a deal with Motown, and they'd found out about him being AWOL, and they dropped him. He did some tunes for Taylor out of Canada. He was a little blues singer. I forget some of his songs, but he wrote one or two songs out in the country and something else. Neither one of them went very big, but he was constantly writing, constantly traveling, constantly learning.
Went to LA for most of the 70s, right?
He was, well, he was all over the joint, and like he was in England, France. He was in Sweden. My mother used to send and get him back, because he was bootlegging some drugs in and out of South America, because he was muling for a little while when he was in Canada. So my brother has dipped and dabbed in a lot of other things way beyond our knowledge and our skills, and so he at the time when he was horning his trades with Young and all those other wannabes in Canada, he was also learning other skills. He learned the music bills. He learned the music field very thoroughly from the ground up. He could manage anything. I remember him bringing Cool and the Gang to Buffalo years ago. He was one of the first black promoters to do that, and he was just a kid when he did that. But he knew the ropes, and he also knew those pitfalls. He knew them, and he learned them the hard way. He was before Prince and before all those guys. He was kind of in between Benny King and Stevie Wonder and my man, you name him. And he was in there learning his trade at that time, because he wasn't good enough to break in, but he was working up, because he was kind of a late bloomer, which was my fear. I was afraid that he was going to be a parasite on my mother, because she was always willing to risk some money for him. And they used to do their own labels up in Canada and bootleg them back down. He had that Get Up and Dance. He did that whole record. They did them up, and they went up into Canada. They cut them, they pressed them, and they brought them back, and they bootlegged them around town and different places. So, you know, I watched the industry. I didn't understand it, but I seen it around it, because my mother always kept her hand in, and we had other family members who were kind of shady. And Rick learned all those tricks, but he had that talent. He had that innate talent down inside, and he was going to be somebody. If he didn't get killed or die, he was going to be somebody. And I think he has that. I think he has a record. It's called Hollywood, and that kind of says it all. I'm going to Hollywood, Mama, and I'm going to make it. So anyway, and he kept on doing it. In the late '70s, when he came out of he'd been in New York. Mama had given him 10,000. He went to New York, and he'd put together a Come Get It. He did the whole album. I think I've said this before. The album was complete, and when he took it to Motown, and they put Art Stewart and Iris Gordy with them, it was complete, and they went in and did something with it, because they had to get their little cut. But it was complete, and when it went big, you know, you and I, and a few more cuts off there, Mary Jane. This was just this was like a coming together of a lot of different strings that had been out there for a long time. He had earned his bones, and it was time for him to make his break. And somebody recognized it. I can remember being in Detroit at that time when he came from Texas, and these guys was playing him on the block, and they didn't know he was my brother. And man, it was the blurring off of every porch, man. And I said, man, that's my brother. They said, yeah, right. We know how much that's your brother. And when he came 3 days, he lit the block up, man. He lit the block up. It was so beautiful. And I was taking him around the stations and stuff. And that was his start. He had Presley Perez with him at that time. another Buffalonian. He was his manager and his security. So and he was on his way. He was started, and once he started, he never looked back. So I could keep on talking like this, but I had I've had a bird's eye view of my brother's talent, and he was something. He was something to behold, and and when you become in awe of your very brother, one of your baby brothers, I mean, that's something. And I had to admire his genius. And I went out to California. He sent for me. He was in the Hearst Manor. He was in the Hearst Manor in Coldwater Canyon, and he brought all them dudes from Buffalo, Levi and all them other guys. They were all there, and I was watching them, man. And he could have had any band, any seasoned band that was really, really good, really seasoned, but he didn't want that. He wanted his own band. He wanted his hometown boys to be with him. He came back and got those guys, and I watched him when he was molding them. And Levi became the leader of the Stone City Band. He made Levi the leader of the Stone City Band because he had that kind of talent. So it was just beautiful to watch that, and I came to work for him. My brother Head was the first one that my mother put out there with him, and he did security. So by the time he brought me out, and he was rolling pretty big then. And I just like to watch him work, man. I used to sit and kind of just be amazed by him. Now here's a guy who I've seen all his life, since he was a little guy. You understand? So he was my brother above everything else. But here was this small genius, man, coming to fulfillment, and I was proud as hell. I went to work for him. Then I worked security. My brother Head taught me the ropes, and a lot of other guys taught me too. A lot of white guys taught me what was going on. Pete Rose, Lou Rosenbaum, Grasshopper, Ron Glassenhofer, all those guys. They pulled me aside. Since my name was different than the others' names, I could do what they couldn't do. Head was a Johnson. Everybody knew that he was his brother, so he could clout and be Rick James's brother. They didn't recognize me. Everybody from Buffalo knew, but everybody else didn't know. So they had me learn my trade under Sims. So a lot of people didn't know I was Rick's brother. I guess if you looked at me, you could tell, but they didn't really care. So so I learned my bones separately, and I became a very good security man. And I think my brother brought me out there for one reason. I wasn't into a lot of drugs. I didn't hardly drink then. I was really a martial artist, and I was kind of dedicated. I think he brought me out to kind of curve the drug trade within the group. He was going to do what he wanted to do because he was the boss, but he didn't want no drug-driven group. He didn't seen too many groups crash and burn, and he knew my feelings about the drugs and stuff. So he kind of cut me loose, and I was checking and blocking them and carrying on, hanging them over balconies and crashing through doors on them. I did just what he thought I would do. I kind of wondered why I didn't get the pushback that I would have normally got, because I'd been working in Detroit, so I knew what the drug boys did, and they did not play. And I wasn't getting that same pushback. They were awfully laid back. They accepted what I was doing, and it was almost like they knew that I knew not. And they just laid. I guess they figured if I was in there long enough that I too would join. They knew more than I knew, because sure enough, as the years passed and I got accustomed to that lifestyle, pretty soon I joined my brother.